to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Begin the meeting with a moment of silence. And if you could hold in your prayers the mother of Michael Combra, Whitman Auxiliary Policeman, who was killed in a motor vehicle accident in Rockford. Meeting's being recorded and televised by the local cable company. Approval of payroll warrants. Can I have a
So moved.
motion, please? Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to accept correspondence in the read file.
So moved.
Second.
Question? All those in favor?
Aye.
Public forum. Is there anyone here who wants to speak about something that's not on the agenda? Approval of meeting minutes, open session September 12th, 2017. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I have a question on it. The question is that Scott and I would have to abstain because we were not at the meeting. So
Right.
can we still vote on it with the two vote? Two in favor and two abstaining?
Sure.
Just a question.
We can defer the vote. Your vote is to accept the minutes. You're not necessarily confirming they're accurate, as long as someone here can confirm that the minutes accurately
I just wanted,
reflect.
Robert's Rules of Order, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So I motion for the minutes.
Okay, and it's been seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain?
To abstain.
Yep.
Okay, public meeting with respect to the application of Cast Iron Cafe, LLC, Robert Berry, for a common vittler's license on the premises located at 535 3 Plymouth Street, subject to the properly executed workers' compensation insurance affidavit, proof of workers' compensation insurance, a lease agreement signed by both the lessor and the lessee, surrender of the license currently held at said site, and final approval of the building commissioner, board of health, and fire chief. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So is Mr. Berry here?
Yes.
Step up here and tell us what you'd like to do.
Okay, my name's Robert Berry. I would like to buy Debbie's Restaurant. I've made arrangements with the landlord to expand the size of it. I have spoken to the Board of Health about putting in handicap men's and ladies' rooms and growing it up to being a little bit bigger than it is now. And pretty much that's it.
Okay. Anyone have any questions?
No, I just want to say that my wife and I would have breakfast at that restaurant on occasion, and she did a terrific job. And I assume that it's going to be basically it'll carry the great food that she's served. And
We are going to continue in that, yes.
Yeah, she's
Just a little more elbow room for Saturdays and Sundays, basically.
It was
And we'll
kinda
be
crowded.
doing a little bit more on-site baking as far as,
Are you cutting into the store next to it that she bought?
yes, I am.
Okay.
And
Well,
the space in behind.
Okay, that's it. Want to give you a plug.
Thank you.
Wine license? Yeah, is there a beer, are you transferring that at the time, or when are you doing that?
I
Transferring.
believe he was applying to transfer the license.
You're not gonna have the beer and wine license?
Oh, no, there's no beer and wine license at the restaurant currently. And no intention on my part of ever seeking one.
That would be a problem.
It was a package, it was,
She had to surrender the
Right.
license that she had in the restaurant when she took
Got the
over
package.
Kelly's Market.
Right, she was selling, right, yeah.
Right.
Okay, any further questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Good luck.
Good luck, see you
Thank you,
there.
gentlemen.
We'll see you.
Thank you.
Set the solid waste fee for FY18, Frank?
yes. The current fee is $250 with a new contract coming up. In December, we're going to find ourselves being pressed a little closer on that number, but I believe we can still do it for fiscal 18. So I'd ask that the board vote to set the fee at $250.
Is there
So
a motion?
moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Not now. There would have been.
All those in favor?
Aye. Frank read my mind.
Okay, discuss the intermunicipal agreement for housing dogs. Frank?
Yes, as you know, we have maintained for a period of time a kennel that was also being used by Abington and Hanson under a regional animal control agreement. We are no longer regionally managing animal control. However, we do have a facility that neither Abington nor Hanson has. I've presented a draft agreement. We still need to work on the fees and how we're going to approach it, but as it sits today, I am recommending that we create an intermunicipal agreement that recognizes Whitman as the responsible party for the kennel and will require a Whitman ACO be involved in all animals received at the kennel and manage the care of the animals during the period they're here. I have had some discussions with the Board of Health about the fees, and we're going to look at those again, so I'll be bringing back a fee structure. But I'm essentially looking at a kennel that will serve Whitman and will periodically and temporarily handle needs in Abington and Hanson. So I'm not looking for a vote tonight.
You're not.
No, because I want to bring back the fees.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Frank, if in fact another town brings an animal into, or even our own ACO offices, bring an animal to our pound, wherever whatever you want to call it, is there a sheet that they need to sign in, say that the
Yes.
dog is there, and they notify each other so that the dog can be, has to be viewed like what, every 5-8 hours, whatever? I don't know what the time is, so that if the dog's in distress, there'll be somebody there.
There is a intake form, and we will have documentation for when and how the animals are visited. I don't know that they'll be every 5 to 8 hours, as long as we make sure that they're fed and exercised in the morning and the evening.
Okay, I want to make sure that
I
something
mean,
doesn't
it's
happen.
not a hotel, we're
Right.
just
Well, but
temporarily caring
if
for
we
them
bring
till
in,
they return.
if we bring in somebody's animal that's been loose and they don't realize it, and we take it under our control, I want to make sure that it gets the best care, and we don't have a problem. It's that simple.
Anybody else? Consider request to designate area at Washington Street and South Avenue for cruiser placement.
Mr. Chairman, there is a map or a layout that I presented to the board reflecting the space that I'm talking about, which is at the northeast corner of Washington Street and South Ave, in front of what was the Baptist Church. For, I think, fairly obvious reasons, we periodically have police vehicles positioned on Washington Street to monitor traffic and maintain public safety. And there was a bit of a Donnybrook about one of the police cars stationed there close to a fire hydrant, and the commentator chose to frame that in the sense that the police aren't subject to the same rules we all are, and we don't want to create that image. We know that the vehicle is there for a particular reason, but in order to ensure that we're not ignoring the fact that there's a fire hydrant on the corner, I would like to designate a no parking area that would go back to the second space from the corner to allow a reasonable area for police to locate and monitor traffic. So I'm asking to designate those two spaces as no parking.
Okay, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion for discussion.
Second.
Okay, Frank, we have very limited parking for businesses, and I assume that those 2 parking spaces are probably used mostly for Mary Lou's across the street or for the clothing store or whatever.
I wouldn't make that assumption. On times where I've been there, I've noted cars parked there for 6 and 7 hours at a time.
So it could be employees
not
or people living in the
customer
church.
parking.
Right, living in that apartment building. I don't know, for somebody who made a comment on social media and then to take offense to it,
It wasn't a comment, it was a,
a jab. You know, I mean, I can understand it, but I'm just saying, cars park,
people have an impression
yeah.
that
Well,
we're showing a different standard of responsibility, and I want to make it clear we're not. And the only way to make that clear is to designate the
okay,
space
if we,
appropriately.
okay, and if we take those 2 parking spaces, we could put a sign saying emergency vehicles only, meaning police or fire.
Absolutely.
We have that right now. Bruce did we didn't put them up, obviously, without the vote, and I appreciate Frank kind of running point on this. So it gets posted on social media, Cruise has been parking there for 50 years, but I guess that doesn't mean that it's right. So
Right.
you know what? Right, wrong, or indifferent, having a cruiser park there, the perception is, well, we can park there, even though, no matter what the job is, I think the easiest way to address it is to take the
Designated.
spaces, we're back, and that puts the whole thing to rest.
Right, and you really don't want to park diagonally, because if you have to come out in a hurry, you
Right.
can't be backing out.
Right.
You need to be able to see on all sides.
Yep.
I agree. Okay.
So,
Chief recommends it?
Anybody else? Have any comments, questions?
What about the other corners where we could only take just one space? Like in front of Mutual Bank, where you'd only have to take one spot, rather than take 2 on that corner. Or you could take the Duval corner,
It's the handicap space.
The handicap spot there.
right, the Mutual spot then would only be,
For us, I would rather have,
Corner.
where we've always been on that corner there, over off on the mutual side. You'd have to, I guess you'd have to take, you could take that one space, but it's only one space. Whereas if you're back, it allows more maneuverability for the cruiser on that other side. So, I mean, having it off to the right, I just think the view coming into the center and what side we're viewing from, the oncoming southbound and we're on the northbound side, and you have the east and west, as opposed to being on the corner, having the southbound come from behind you and the northbound's over to the left, and east and west, like you can't pick up, if you wanted to monitor, like an inspection sticker. So a car just say going east, the inspection sticker's on the other side of the car. Whereas if the cruiser's here facing north, that sticker goes by, a car going north, the sticker's there. I'm just saying as one example that, we'd rather have the cruiser there where traditionally it's always been.
Also, I have to agree with the chief on this one, Randy, because of the fact that I've parked in front of Mutual, the one parking space. But in order for me, once I'm done with my business at the bank and I've got to go, I'm hemmed in because it's so tight there. Either I go straight and take a right, or I have to cut somebody off. Where he's suggesting, you have all that space in front of you where the fire hydrant is and no one parks there, and you got maneuverability in an emergency. So I have to agree.
And in addition to, we were talking about the feet from a crosswalk before and taking spaces anyway. Well, now we'd be creating that because we'd be parked right there. Whereas if we take these 2, like Frank had said, we're back far enough where that crosswalk space is open.
Anybody else? It's pretty fast thinking there, Chief, on both of those counts. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, act on the request of Police Chief Scott Benton to appoint Officer Richard Eldridge as Assistant Weights and Measures Inspector for the purpose of commercial traffic enforcement.
So moved.
Is there a second?
second,
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
I know what they do.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Old business, deliberations in connection with the disciplinary hearing held on 9/19/17 to consider allegations regarding the alcoholic beverage license issued to O'Toole's Pub on the premises located at 24 Rayner Avenue. We'll be opening up the discussion in a few seconds. What I'd like to do is to frame it, if I can, a little bit. At the end of the 4-hour hearing, the last time we were here, we were given a logbook that we were asked to, that we thought it would be helpful to look through the logbook as we were thinking about this for 2 weeks. We all received copies of the pages of the logbook. I have to admit that it brings up more questions than it does answers, and I don't want to get into another 4-hour meeting tonight dealing with this logbook, which is almost useless. Pages missing, blank pages, undated things. The logbook didn't help me. I think I understand why it didn't help me. I have a couple of questions about it if it comes up again. When was it first created and why? My impression is probably because of what happened back in 14. No, I think there's some entries in here before 14. It was before that.
Chair, can I comment on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna ask a couple of questions. Comment will be fine. When was it created and why? Who's responsible to maintain and make entries? It's difficult to figure that out. How often is it looked at or reviewed? How often is it updated? And the purpose of the log.
Okay. Again, I think we did talk about it, but it was quite a long meeting, a lot was covered.
Yeah.
And that basically originated through the discussion I had with Chief Benton in an effort to be proactive. Yeah, the book, it's missing some pages. Basically, the intent of that is for me to know what's going on if I'm not there. So if something came in, it's so I can come in, check the book, and if somebody says, Tom, if something happened prior to me coming in, they said, we jotted it down. So it keeps it fresh for me. It's really nothing for the town. It's nothing other than for me to know, like, okay, there was an incident, this happened, and for me to take action. So, yeah, it's really not as thorough as, it's
I wonder why I was reading it actually, but yeah, okay.
well, the reason why
I
you're
understand
reading
what
it
you're
is,
saying now.
is simply that, is to say that, like, if something went on,
Yeah.
that I'm gonna know about it,
You
and
would
that's the
know.
communication. And some things, it could be verbal, if I'm walking in the door and they say, it's not necessarily every single, oh, this is in the book. It's a heads up for me.
Okay.
That's,
Question, on the last page,
yep,
there's a list of names. A couple of them we talked about a couple of weeks ago.
right.
And it looks like there have been some suspensions handed out to people.
Yeah.
What does someone have to do to get suspended?
Anything that I deem to be inappropriate. I'm like, so if somebody acts up, or if they mistreat my staff, or if they mistreat somebody, it could be it could be just a derogatory remark, ethnic, anything. And I said, you know what, when you take a rest for a while, we don't need it in here. So it's stuff like that.
Okay.
It's, like I said, it's not the most comprehensive article you've ever read, obviously, but it's just little excerpts from day-to-day operations that they think need my attention.
Yeah, on the very first page, one that's sort of crossed out, there's a list of names. And I think I recognized one of them as being a relative, so I really don't want to get into it anyway. But,
Well, I don't want anybody's name. Listen, to be quite honest with you, at the discretion of my attorney, he was like, Tom, you really don't have to forward this. This was something that I offered up, is to say, look, we're not turning a blind eye to this stuff, Chair.
that someone's making you informed of, you're getting an idea of what's going on in your place.
Exactly.
Okay.
Just want the record to reflect that that was never mandated by the chief nor the town at any point in time. It was a suggestion by Mr. O'Toole, and we did not offer it as evidence.
Okay.
Attorney Tobin offered
Okay.
it as evidence.
What, the log?
Yes,
You brought the log.
yeah, he offered it as evidence. Yes, he asked for us to offer it.
We asked for a copy of it because it was brought to the last
Okay.
hearing
Okay.
as evidence of some form of compliance with the representations that had been previously made by O'Toole's Pub to this board. That was the context.
Okay.
Can I simply ask, is the list of parties who are or have been suspended, is that a current list? Because there are no dates.
It's, again, this is for me to know and have an idea of what's going on with the pub. It's not to offer for you so that you can keep tabs on people. It's quite honestly, when I'm not there, the goings on.
But for example, it says.
The dates are irrelevant. It's for me. It's current to me, and the whole idea of it is to show you that we are concerned about public safety. I met with the chief, and through discussion, he said, you know, it'd be a good idea if you did that. So I don't understand the relevance of, I'm not gonna answer that.
So for
The
example.
dates are irrelevant, please don't read from the log. It has nothing to do with this case. Zero. It's not in compliance with any of the statutes. Sorry, Plan.
They know that. There's 7 allegations, and none of the allegations has anything to do with the logbook.
Right.
There is an issue regarding compliance with representations made to the board at a prior disciplinary hearing. One of the representations made at that time was that a log would be made.
No, there was nothing said to me mandated that you need to have this, or this, in any, you can read through what you want, you guys.
There was a conversation between the chief and Mr. O'Toole,
I
all
think-
for the benefit of the town and the benefit of the total purpose, to get along better with the town.
Yeah, well, I think I recall I recall a conversation at that meeting about your meeting with the chief. I have here something submitted from you, though. It's not dated, as usual. A proactive approach to public safety.
Again, that was with the
Okay.
chief saying, look, I want.
But, wait, new neon green safety colored staff shirts.
Right.
Okay, it's fine. Panic button. Okay, on the keypad. And of course, I wonder why the panic button wasn't used that night. Doorman on during weekend nights. Incident log with repercussions for repeat offenders to include but not limited to suspension to being barred. Okay, so the incident log isn't something that you submitted to the town that was going to be part of a proactive approach to public safety, correct? New LCD lights, new surveillance video and computer software, written acknowledgement from each employee regarding staff expectations and duties. That's all good. This was all like,
Proactive.
yeah, that's,
And again, like,
Yep.
I'm getting it, to reiterate, the
But-
chief made a suggestion, I said, yeah.
but let's not say the log is unimportant. If part of your proactive approach is to keep a log and send a memo to us saying that you're going to keep one. You get what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying?
I fully understand what you're saying. I'm just saying in respect to me being in violation. That's why I presented the log. I showed you the shirt, the
Yeah.
lights. I have all the saying, look, I haven't just thumbed my nose at this stuff. And as far as the panic button and all this, I think we all have looked at the film. We can watch it again. This happened in a span of seconds. And when somebody called, and to reiterate, but I have to stand up, Chair, for my staff did an outstanding job. You all commended the guy. How many other establishments in town
I
have
did.
the same or less staff?
I thought that the cook did a good job breaking up the fight. I did. I mean, he had a couple of people who didn't like each other, and he got in the middle of it, and he calmed it down after the guy's head was creased. But he did that. He did that. I thought that was... I'd like him to have my back if I get in trouble. I mean, because he did that. But as far as the videotape is concerned, and this is part of the problem that I have, as I'm going over in my mind what kind of action the board ought to take. We basically have a videotape that's incomplete, and I think, frankly, our police department may have to take some of the responsibility for its being incomplete. Some of the responsibility, not all of it. Because the videotape that we saw was a phone record of a partial video of what happened that night. Everyone agrees that a guy comes out of the restroom and creases somebody over the head with a mug. And we all saw that. What we didn't see was what was characterized by the witnesses that you called as a conversation between people, and what our police men who testified called more of a confrontation than a conversation. We didn't get to see that.
Okay.
We haven't seen that. We weren't able to see that. Why? because the police, neither the police nor you followed up on having a record of that night that was complete. And I thought that our policemen that testified were credible. They seemed credible to me. However, I can't really judge whether your staff or your witnesses were giving us the true picture of what happened, or our policemen were giving the true picture of what happened, because I don't have evidence that was there at one time, but has been erased.
Mr. Chairman, the only witnesses that testified that had firsthand knowledge were the 3 live witnesses for us. They were the only ones that were there.
You're right. The police came in
They
and
were not
taking.
there. They
That's
watched a video, one through his phone. And Mr. O'Toole was up front, and
You're right.
you can take a copy of it, you can do whatever you want, as he's been all the time with the Whitman Police.
And if I-
Detective Campbell even testified that it was his mistake, that he should have followed up within a short period of time. It didn't happen. That's in the testimony.
Now, you had conversations with Lieutenant Campbell afterwards, didn't you, Matt?
Could I add to it before?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I think it's very important. I think it was great that the detective came back up, because he said, and it's on record, oh, you know what, I recall Tommy texting me saying, are you sure you have everything? I'm at the bar, you can come down if you need anything else. So I don't want to act like I erased some film, and that's right from the detective's mouth, verbatim, so.
And I don't want to get into any detail regarding the conversation I had as town council with the town witness. But I think Mr. O'Toole hit this issue on the head. There was, as I understand it, a communication after the night of the incident wherein Mr. O'Toole indicated that there was, as what I understand, some expectation that Whitman PD was going to return to retrieve the tape.
Not at all. Like I said, I had reached out and said, if you happen to need anything, and he obviously taped what he taped. We watched it together. That's why there's audio on that. And with all due respect for our law enforcement, and I definitely don't want this to sound like I'm bashing anybody, but to watch a video, it's illegal for me to have any audio. So how can they tell if there was what words were being said? I mean, it's
It's also a discrepancy of who the person, the victim, was speaking to first. When he was speaking, it appeared there maybe have been an altercation, a verbal altercation. There was some testimony on who he was speaking to. The officers thought in the video he was speaking to the suspect, and the 3 people that were there testified no, he was speaking to the suspect's friend.
What we do know is that this did not happen in seconds. Because the video that you observed was about a minute in length.
And I'm gonna watch it again. He walked out of the bathroom, and it was less than 3 seconds when the altercation came. So it wasn't a minute. It wasn't.
No, the cook was involved within seconds.
3 seconds. He was breaking
What
it.
we know is that there was something that led up to it. We know that one of the parties went into the bathroom. We know that there was sufficient time for him to return. We know that the first incident caused the cook to come out from where he was cooking to intervene. We know from the witnesses the parties had to be separated.
No, we don't.
We don't.
No, we don't. No, the suspect's friend
We know.
and the victim.
we
So
know
no, you're mischaracterizing the evidence in the 4-hour hearing.
We know from the staff that based upon that incident, the parties were asked to leave.
Correct.
That's right.
Right?
Correct. And they settled their tab. If somebody asks you to leave, do I need to call Whitman PD? So if I ask you, if you're having an argument and I say, I would like you to settle your tab and leave, and you say, nope, no problem. Put your jacket on and you ask, I'm gonna settle my tab. And something, that right then and there, everything's good. There's no reason, there's no hostility. And on the video you can see it, he's settling his tab, he's zipping his jacket, and out comes and they have a quick, and that, I mean, I guess that's.
We know that the cook intervened, and we know that the cook then abandoned ship. The cook
He didn't abandon
No,
ship.
we don't know
He
that.
settled it. He
We know,
Again,
we know,
again,
we know
it's
he
not
went,
even close.
we know he went back to the
We
kitchen.
know that he
They
went
went to
back
get their takeout food.
Yeah,
We
right.
know-
Because they were gonna eat there, and they said, we'll settle our tab, we'll get our food to go, thank you, and we'll leave.
We know-
Because there wasn't a
We
situation,
know that-
as the people testified that were there. There was not a situation prior to the videotape of the fight. There was not a situation.
Then what council is asking you to conclude is that that first interaction was not the provocation that led one of the parties to come out and immediately smash the other over the head. It was pure coincidence.
No, there was beer spilled on him. There was
was
horseplay, that we heard evidence of
there
horseplay.
was certain-
Don't tell what council is trying to tell you. I can tell the board what I'm trying to tell them. You don't need to speak for me, I can do that.
That's the
What
conclusion.
you heard is
that he
evidence
asked
of
you to
horseplay. You heard evidence of horseplay and a beer that spilled on the suspect. Detective Campbell testified he didn't know if it was a bottle or a mug, didn't know if it was wet on his leg or his shirt, but he did appear to have a beer spilt on him, and he appeared to be angry.
Angry,
He appeared to be, because he had a beer spilt on him.
of course.
Okay.
And the cook, a staff member, intervened,
Didn't intervene. He didn't intervene between the suspect and the victim.
came out, he attended to the first incident. He then left the immediate scene. The parties were not permanently separated.
They were permanently separated.
The
It's obvious from the video that they were.
The one party was allowed to go into the men's room unsupervised, return to the scene.
If someone spills beer on their shirt, they should be allowed to go to the men's room. He wasn't doing anything.
Let him talk.
And a second incident occurred. There
Right.
was time to intervene. There was time to lock one of the parties out. There was time to call the Whitman Police Department. There was time to hit the panic button.
There was no need.
There was no
There was no need. They settled their tab and said they were gonna leave.
Apparently there was a need.
No, there really
The guy
wasn't
ended
a
up
need.
with his head creased.
Chair.
Yeah, but is that foreseeable? That's the question. Is that
If
foreseeable
you ask
to
somebody to
anybody?
leave and they say,
So
I'm gonna
reason-
settle
Well,
my
that's
tab.
that's only one of the questions. That's only one of the questions.
That's only one of the questions?
Sure,
Well,
one of
that
the
was- That was
questions.
the violation that we're here before you. The foreseeability. That
Well,
was-
no, there are a number of violations.
Okay.
Foreseeability isn't the only violation. And what I'm trying to tell you is that actually, for me, foreseeability is difficult to establish because I have some witnesses who said they saw something that's different from what our police people testified to. And all I had to go on was a video that was incomplete. So foreseeability for me is a problem. It could be maybe no problem for other people, but for me it is. However, there was no manager on duty at the time.
There was a manager
No,
who
no.
wasn't listed with the state. Like I said,
No, there
my
was, there
testimony-
was no, you're the guy. It wasn't, it was clear to us, or at least it was clear to me, when I'm listening to the cook, that even though you can designate him after the fact as a manager, he didn't know he was the manager. He had never seen the rules and regulations at the town. None of your staff had ever seen the rules and regulations that the town had delivered to you. They had
Excuse me.
never, they hadn't seen them.
Excuse me, and that was a great question from your attorney, but it was never really followed up. At our meetings, that we go over, the obligation for people who are cooking, they are slash managers, okay? Now, why is that funny? I don't understand
Relax,
the,
relax,
I'm not
I
like,
don't understand the
The
snickering.
testimony, the
Today-
testimony is Thomas O'Toole, okay, was the manager that day. He was coming in and he was late. That was the testimony.
Yeah.
He was the manager. He was designated
And he
with the
wasn't-
town as a manager.
and
He
he
was on, wasn't there at that time.
Right.
Was on his way.
Right.
That's the testimony.
that's a violation.
If you look at your rules and regulations, if you have evidence, which they did not have evidence, because I asked the chief if he could provide any evidence that Mr. O'Toole was not there for 40 hours that week, then it's not a violation. Then it's not a violation. In Section C
Well-
of the rules and regulations.
Well, in my view, it is. In my view, it is. In my view, it's a violation the police weren't called by somebody from O'Toole's. That's my
Okay.
view. It's a violation.
Well, someone did call the police, and you read the decision from the ABCC, correct, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I did.
And it talks about not being a violation if the police were already called?
I read that.
Okay.
All right.
Did you consider that? It's your deliberation. We've already had the hearing.
Yeah, I
Really
know,
not-
I'm not
a-
having the hearing again.
Yes, exactly, and I'm not either,
I'll
so.
note again for the record, the ABCC decision predates the rules and regs that were issued by the town. But clearly,
He's talking about a different decision.
no, I believe he's referring to the ABCC decision relative to O'Toole's Pub. That was the decision that he read.
No.
The December 2015 decision.
Let's go back, we'll go back a little bit.
Sure.
In 13, or in 14, there was an ABCC decision
Yes.
that penalized you, penalized the bar. But it didn't penalize you for all of the things that we had.
Actually, there were 36 violations, and 35 were found not responsible, and one violation was found
That's right,
responsible.
that's right, there was.
Yeah.
And that's because of the sloppy way that we had managed the thing up to that point. We didn't have written rules and regulations at that point. So
I don't
we-
think it had.
So we did them,
I don't think it was all about the rules and regulations, if you read it, but.
Okay. Anyway, it was partly because of that. But there was,
Partly, I
there was a violation then. There was a violation in 16, 4/27/16. You were cited by the Liquor Control Board for serving a minor. Okay, not by us, but by them, by serving a minor. And that decision was made in June of, the final decision was made in June of 16.
Can I just
I
ask?
I'm just,
I understand this, but are you looking at the totality of what's happened at O'Toole's Pub to decide whether this evidence was enough to get over the threshold of a violation? So are we looking at a past to see if this happened on this date?
No.
I'm not asking you. Mr. Chairman,
I don't understand your
so
question. I'm sorry.
you're talking about the totality of O'Toole's Pub and violations. Is that considered in whether this is an actual violation on that date?
If we consider what happened on that date in January as a violation, and I've given you a couple of reasons why I think it might be a violation. The lack of the manager being on duty, the failure to call the police, and the possible foreseeability issue, but that to me is questionable. And a number of other things. If we perceive as a board that he was in violation that O'Toole's is in violation on that day, what I'm trying to do is to give you a framework by which you understand that it's not the first offense. We had a first offense. We had a second offense. The second offense was the serving a minor. We could call this the third offense. And if it's a third offense, according to our rules and regulations, it's a heavy penalty that we have to give you. Our rules and regulations didn't reach you, I don't think, until April of 17, right?
16.
16.
April of 16. That's when they reached you. So I would be willing to consider this not a third offense, but a second offense. And as far as penalties for a second offense, the minimum is 3 days, the maximum is 10. What I'd be looking for is a motion from somebody on the board, other than me, otherwise I'll have to pass the gavel, to suspend O'Toole's Pub for the violations on that day in January, for 5 days, 2 of which would be served, 3 of which would keep in abeyance to make sure you're a good person for a year. Is there
I'll
anyone
make
want?
that motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
No, I can shut up and let you all discuss it.
Okay, I'll weigh in. I think it's a simpler case than we're trying to make. It's not as difficult as we're trying to make it. I agree with Chairman Kowalski on a number of things. One, whether you say the cook was the manager or not at that time, in my opinion, there was no manager on site. Now, what you said, what you're going to start doing, or what you're doing, is to have managers or somebody wear a shirt so that your customers know that they're a O'Toole's employee and not somebody else just having a couple of drinks at your bar, but they're an employee and they're in charge. I assume the cook wasn't wearing one, and he was the cook. You were running late. I know your wife, you said your wife opened the bar that day and she stayed as long as she could and then you were gonna come afterwards. I do not know when she went home. I don't recall. But you didn't get there, you got there 5 minutes after the incident because they called your wife and she got there and you got there 5 minutes after your wife and you said you were running late and we're talking, what, 9 o'clock at night, 9:30? That's not running late. That was being someplace else in my opinion and you weren't planning on being there. My opinion only. Because nobody's late. If the manager that's leaving at 4 will say, nobody's 5 hours late. My opinion. Okay, that's one. So there's no manager on site. Now the cook did an excellent job when he heard the noise, came out and broke them up, and they suggested that one of them, time for you to go, sit in your bar and go. You have a pizza in the oven or whatever, let me get your takeout and you can bring it home. Consequently, what happened was he left that area. Now, mind you, I'm talking through experience because I was a police officer for 10 years and I had bar details. And we always had a patrolman in uniform, which was myself, and a doorman that was in a shirt that he worked for the bar, but he was a Duxbury police officer that was working part-time. That being said, when the cook went in the back room to retrieve the guy's food, he left the scene, so it wasn't under control of anybody at that time, right? If in fact he stayed there and said, look, forget the pizza, you're not gonna get it, and he settled the bill and he made sure he was out the door, he would have done the job completely. That's what he should have done. The fact is he didn't. Whether he wasn't trained or he wasn't sure what he should have done, he was just trying to help the customer get his food. But he left the scene, which left combatants to go at each other. Now to turn around and say, well, the guy's friends, they could have stopped or whatever, no, it doesn't happen. Another issue I have is when the bartender, she said, should I call the police? Someone yelled no, somebody else already called them. Yes, they did call them, but the fact is, it's not that other person's responsibility. It's the responsibility of an employee of the bar to make sure, and I don't care if the police department got 20 calls that night. It's the employee's responsibility to make sure that that has happened. And the third of all, the bartender, she knew that there was blood because she saw it, and the cook saw it on the shirt. Who the hell called the Whitman Fire Department, the ambulance, the police department when they showed up? I can't believe that. I cannot believe that. This guy could have had his eye taken out and we had to wait 3, 5, 6 minutes for the police department to get there to call an ambulance. Time is everything. And second of all, does the town have a list of who the managers are in your establishment?
100%.
Good, they have a list.
They do.
All right, and I would say that if you have 1, 2, 3, 4 managers, that I would accept that someone be there all the time, and if you're running late, the other person doesn't leave until you show up. And I think that if it's somebody other than you or your wife, is the two lists as the managers, they know you, that they should be in uniform, and that's what they do. Because if he's a cook and he's a manager, he comes out and there's an incident, he can't go back into the kitchen until that incident is resolved and the parties are broken up. Been there, done that. I've seen it.
Could I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
If I train all my bartenders to be managers, how do you feel about that?
Okay. Do you really think, now the bartender, she was here, nothing against her, very petite young lady. Do you really think that she could stop a fight?
Is this what?
Your cook,
I'm
yes.
going down a slippery slope that I'm sure my attorney, but you know what? My stubbornness. However you treat me, this is going to every single establishment right now.
Without
So
doubt.
everybody else is in 100% compliance, because I don't think so.
Well, then
So
we
if
have
you
to
don't
make
think,
sure that happens.
so if you don't think that a young lady can handle herself sufficiently, then that's gonna be across the board for every single establishment.
I don't know that. I mean, but let me ask you a question.
But you just
Right.
let that.
Let me ask you a
Mr.
question then.
Salvucci, Mr. Lyman testified that it's not practical to
Right,
have
it's
a
not,
manager
because
there
what
at all
happens
times.
if she
That was
got
in the
hurt?
testimony.
Well, it's in any
I
establishment.
could get it, I'm not big enough for that. Your cook was, he did a great job. But unfortunately, he had to leave the scene and he lost control because he didn't know better. Or he wanted to get the customer his food, which I could understand. He was the cook and he wanted to treat the customer right. But anyway.
If there's
we-
equality across the board for all of this, we all understand where this is going. I feel like I'm being browbeat about this. It's,
You know,
if every other place is under the same scrutiny, right, that I am, then I'm good. Every place. And if we go back, the question was asked to me before, is there any other incidents in any other places? I went through the police law, and I went through every single thing, and I started to question, how come they weren't brought up on violation? No names, because I worry about me. But now this is starting to come at me like, okay, you're held to this. You can't have a cook that's a manager. Oh, he's a cook. So every other place, I'd just be careful how we
Did I
go with
say
this,
you couldn't
because
have the cook as the manager?
there's going to be, he was the manager, he wasn't written down, and so I said it was understood. When we have meetings, I said, does everybody understand that this, who's ever there, who's ever the cook, they're going to be the manager. I hope, and I haven't done this, but I'm going to do my research, that every single establishment has listed all of their managers. So if you happen to hire a new person, they're going to go with the state and say, oh yeah, that manager is listed with the state. Because there was nothing for me to sign from you. And I'll be honest with you, one further comment, Frank laughed. We had a meeting and he says, our selectmen say, we call these the old tools rules. It really feels like an outward attack, that this is kind of comical to you.
I'm sorry, I have to jump in here and reject that characterization. I did
You
not.
absolutely said that to me,
Not
Frank.
laugh. I did say
You
to you,
laughed.
and the chief was present at the moment.
You laughed.
You can call these the O2 rules because as a
You laughed,
result
Frank.
of your last, excuse me, I'm speaking.
We're going off the radar.
Excuse me, I'm speaking. As a result of your last violation, the town developed and presented license rules. You want to mischaracterize it, go ahead, but I think people know that.
Mr. Salvucci, Mr. Lyman was asked in testimony whether the other establishments have managers on prior to this incident and to provide those documents, and it wasn't provided because he didn't have it. That's why.
Well, I don't know.
Okay, so O'Toole's had Thomas O'Toole, but there was no documents provided of the other establishments that had managers provided to the town prior to this incident,
Okay.
because nobody else did it.
All right.
We have the option to do that. We had weeks till the documents
maybe
can
we
be
need to
provided to
start
the board.
making sure
They haven't
everybody knows the
been
manager.
provided.
Okay, and another issue, when you're saying other establishments, I don't know if you remember, but years and years ago, the office had a problem, and a person was stabbed. And to the results of that, we ended up having a police officer present on weekends, because they used to have a band there and stuff like that. On weekends, they couldn't open unless there was a police officer. We did that for a while until they got under control, and then our chief at the time said that it's unnecessary. I was thinking when this whole issue started that maybe that's our issue. Right, maybe we need a police officer on duty Friday and Saturday nights, right? Just to make sure, to cover that, because he can get into control. But then last Monday, Frank and I came back and we delivered your book back to you, right? We came back from a meeting at the high school. And I've been in this town over 40 years, and it's the first time I've been in the front of your building. I didn't go in, but I was able to see through the windows. It's a very small building. It's a very small bar. You really don't need a police officer there, but you need a manager. You need someone in a shirt that the customers say, this is a manager, and you keep things under control. With your eyes and your knowledge, you can see if things are getting hot and heavy, and you can calm them down, right? And with your book, he's been in the book 3 times. All right, look, time to get ready, time for you to go, settle up. You stay with him, you settle up, and you walk him out the door. What he does outside your establishment, your hands are clean. The fact is, that's what I think needs to happen. And that wasn't there. And I'm sorry. I can't see anybody saying that they were late they were running late that night. And running late to be the manager on site 5 hours? That's not running late.
Excuse me, it's not 5 hours. We determined, and again, look at,
Frank,
we said, my shift starts at 7, okay? So I said, you should get there on 6:30 or 7. I had called, and Brian testified to it, saying, Tom said, hey, just hang in there, I'm running a little late. It was council that said, well, you're open to 2, so you're technically, that's where we started to get into what the new rules say. They say 40 hours, or do they say all the time? And then,
They say both.
They say both.
They say both.
So it's
Thank
very
you.
ambiguous.
They say both.
So
But the thing is, it's saying there should be a manager on site. You should, and that the main manager probably shouldn't work any less than 40 hours, then you have a second manager there to cover when you're over your 40 hours.
so
The
we-
rules and regulations do not say
so-
that.
But I'm just
Mr.
saying, that's
Salvo-
how you
Salvucci,
can
Mr.
interpret it, that's how I
Salvucci,
look
at
at
the end of the
it.
day, right?
That's fine.
At the end of the day, see,
And I think 5 is too late.
the anger, okay? The anger that I'm seeing is, we're supposed to be working together here. We're supposed to, like, when I talk to the chief, say, hey, let's try to be proactive and do the right thing. This is like a punishment thing. And the anger that you're expressing to me is insulting. It's insulting that the selectmen have never stepped in an establishment that's been here for 26 years.
I don't
But
drink.
you can go somewhere else and have dinner at another establishment. Oh, okay, but that's acceptable. It's quite an insult, to be honest with you, to any business owner.
You've gone,
Yeah, this is
beyond?
yeah,
you've gone above and beyond, yes, you
I'm
have.
glad this is televised.
Mr. Salvucci, just in 1 second, just to clarify, you said, I don't care if the police have been called 20 times, someone from O'Toole's Pub has to call.
I believe so.
Okay, the ABCC disagrees with you.
Well, I
And
know
it's
that,
not
but that's
reason-
my-
Okay, but it's not reasonable, if the police are already called, for someone to say, guys, you still need to get here.
Okay.
Right, because they're on their way. They
Okay.
got there, didn't they?
Okay, you're a friend of the guy that did the hitting. I'm gonna call the police, and you say, no, that's all right, I already called, and you didn't call them.
Well, there was
You lied to me.
there was testimony that he
But I'm just
called, they
saying,
knew the
that could
person who
happen.
was calling.
But if the employee
and
made the
person had
phone call,
ties to
you
the
know
police.
that they were gonna get there. Look, my priority, I'm a business, I believe in business in town, that's why I'm not pushing a police officer. But let me tell you something, my main concern is town people. They need to feel safe when they go into an establishment. And for them to feel safe, and if there needs to be a manager, we're saying a manager on duty, as long as that establishment is open, then they should be there. And they should be that you should be able to know that they're the manager by the way they're dressed.
Okay, with all due respect, I will make all those changes. So again, the hostility, I didn't list them with the state as a manager. People come and go and come. If that's going to be protocol, fine. There was nothing sent to me for you to say there was no manager. So the two things that are being cited for violations is no phone call, which we said there was a phone call, and I reiterated to my staff, and I was angered and said, call anyway. We had an incident where there was an accident just up the street the other night, and the police, somebody said they called, they go, call anyway, call anyway. We called, and it was, whether it was late, they were already in their way. They said, why are you calling? We already got a phone call. I said, because we're going to make sure that O'Toole's Pub called. So I'm with you on that.
Okay.
I'm with you on the shirts. The managers, if you have a specific class training that you want me, I'll put every single bartender through it. But I don't feel like we're understaffed. The quote-unquote manager, he knew his jobs, his obligations. Do I give them a hard copy? No. I run through at our meetings and say, this is what you are required to do. And that's why I say the acknowledgement. Again, it wasn't part of anything but me saying, look, we cover all this stuff. It was a very unfortunate incident. It's hearsay and speculation from the officers to say that, well, there was something before, but the tape was erased. I'm sorry about that, but I'm here to reach a conclusion where you read the letter that was sent to you. There's people calling me left and right. I want to sign it. I want to sign it. I'm with you. And again, like, I don't know why you laugh at that.
I'm
It's so
coughing, I'm
aggravating.
coughing.
Dan, you got kind of off the track there.
Right, okay.
We're deliberating the motion. Your conversation with Mr. O'Toole was more in terms of giving him advice about the future. It's what it sounded like to me. I'd like to get the discussion back to what we're talking about. With all due respect, Mr. O'Toole, though, my recollection of the Brian Bonner, is that his name?
Yeah.
Correct.
Of his testimony was that he was unclear about what he would do as a manager. He was unclear whether he was the manager at that time. He was unclear about what his duties were. You may have had conversations, you may have had meetings since then.
Okay, well then
But from my recollection of what he said, was that, hey, whatever, it just wasn't clear to me that he knew what his responsibilities were. He came out and broke up a fight. whether he was doing that, I don't know that he was doing that because he thought that's what a manager did. He was doing that because that's what he did. Anyone else have anything they need to say, want to say? Where the motion on the floor is to suspend for 5 days, 2 days in, actually, 2 days with 3 days with 3 days held in abeyance. So it's a suspension of 5 days, 2 served, 3 held in abeyance.
Can I just say something real quick?
Yep.
Mr. O'Toole, I grew up right down the street from your establishment, all right? Obviously, in 26 years, you've had more good days than you've had bad. That's obvious. The two gentlemen that sit beside you are your legal advice. When I look at this, I look at it more from a common sense approach, that the videotape that the police need is to prove a crime. Their portion of their tape is what Detective Campbell needed when he went to court to show that there was a crime committed, an assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon. On your end, I just can't get over why you've been through this before, and you wouldn't do everything in your power just for liability and licensing to try and get that previous portion of the tape. The police didn't need that previous portion, you did.
They secured that with all due respect.
No, you're right, the
But they
police.
said we got what we needed.
Excuse me, Detective Campbell secured the portion he needed.
Correct.
For his court case, to provide evidence of assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon, he had what he needed. So
I think he testified it was a malfunction, and that's why he didn't get it all. He
when
had his
dealing with
kit-
this case, but what we're talking about is, I don't want this to be construed as the police didn't do their job.
I
because-
agree.
But by
absolutely.
means of the criminal case, they had what they needed.
There's no question about that, but I believe he was trying to film the entire
Right.
7 minutes, and Mr. O'Toole's sitting next to him
But
thinking he's filming
knowing,
it.
when he knows
But
he doesn't
testifies
have
it was a
it,
malfunction.
Right.
Okay. When he knows he doesn't have it,
I think the onus was on you at that point to say, I might need that at a later date. This could prove worthy for me. You didn't do that.
can I just say, when he knows...
I'm not gonna beat him up, and I don't wanna really continue it.
That's fine, but
So
when he
just let me
knows he
finish,
doesn't
okay?
have it, when does he know he doesn't have it? Sir, when did he know he doesn't have it?
At the last meeting.
So,
But is the onus...
Detective
is-
Campbell never said,
if he's-
I don't have all the video.
I really
Mr.
didn't wanna
O'Toole."
argue about it with you, but he's the owner of the establishment.
Okay,
For liability and licensing, okay? It is not Detective Campbell's purpose
I agree,
to provide that for him,
I agree.
okay? That's his evidence. He should have secured it, all right? I didn't want to really beat you up on it. Secondly, knowing you've been in this position before, is it not common sense to say, you know what, this guy's bleeding pretty bad, somebody maybe should have called the police? Now, you may get off on an ABCC technicality and by the law, but
Excuse me?
on an appeal. Now, I'm not saying that you may not appeal this and the verdict comes down differently by however the law is interpreted. But by a common sense approach, when you have somebody bleeding that bad in your establishment, as the owner of the place, do you not make sure that help is on the way? Or and your employees should know that.
They were told that they were on
But
the
they
way.
didn't do it.
No, but they were
And-
told that it was done, and the response time was let's look at the response time. It was minutes. It's not like people were
But
sitting around
you
watching this
don't
guy
know that.
bleed out. I
Okay?
do know that because we
Now-
have the video.
I commend you, I definitely commend the cook for coming out. Definitely, gentleman went above and beyond, okay? Because that wasn't his task. He was the cook. He went above and beyond. Again, Mr. Bonner testified that really he wasn't the manager that night. He was more holding down the ship for you. Correct?
Absolutely.
So by just a common sense approach, you can't say to yourself, when you go home and look in the mirror at night, you just can't say to yourself, I really did everything I could have. I'm not saying that some of these things, technicality-wise, but really, I'm not trying to put you out of business, but this board has an obligation to keep your patrons safe, to keep people of this town that they can go into a restaurant and they know they're gonna be safe. And I don't want you to get the feeling that we're being hard on you, but it's time to make some corrections.
Okay, thank you, Randy. I think this hasn't sounded to me like a discussion of the motion. It sounded to me in both your part and Dan's part as a conversation with Mr. O'Toole about the way he should be running his business. And your point, though, about Detective Campbell having what he needed as far as the criminal cases is a good point to have made. I understand that now. What we're discussing, what we're deliberating about, is whether or not the motion to suspend O'Toole's for 5 days, 2 served, 3 in abeyance. What we're discussing is whether or not that's an appropriate action for us to take. I think the discussion ought to be about whether that's an appropriate action for us to take, not a continued dialogue with Mr. O'Toole about the way he runs his business.
Okay, can
Matt,
I ask a question on that?
just a second.
Does the
Matt?
motion need to be amended to provide for a period of time?
Yeah.
That
he-
any deferred penalty would be held in abeyance?
Exactly, and also a period of time within which he can choose to take his 2 days. I mean, that should be in there, too. In other words, take 2 days between now and such a time.
I think the board has typically imposed the discipline by giving a period of time.
Yeah.
That the discipline must be served no later than,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
right?
Okay.
So it's a window,
Then we need
leaving it
that.
to the discretion
We need-
of the holder of the license
Mhm.
to,
To do it within that window.
exactly.
Okay, so we need the motion amended then. You were thinking about that, Scott?
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess I would amend the motion, that it'd be the 2 days, 3 in abeyance, 2 days to be taken at his discretion between now and the end of this calendar year.
Okay,
Further, I believe at least one of those 2 days, and they should be consecutive,
Mhm.
should include either a Friday or a Saturday.
okay.
One of the two.
And
One of the two, not
And,
both.
and also,
And
and
his
to
discretion.
Matt's point, at what point of time is the abeyance not have to be observed any longer?
1 year,
1 year from now?
1 year from now,
1 year from now?
1 year from this decision.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
And this is based on it being, and I guess, to write it up for them, based on it being,
Right, after,
Second
if we were to vote this tonight, there'd be a written decision written and sent to you as expeditiously as possible.
And I have a question on that, and how if the 3 days that were held, what would they have to do that would enact that next 3 days?
Another
What type of
violation.
violation?
Violate the rules and procedures that have been given.
Any rule or procedure
Mhm.
that the town has?
Yeah.
in fairness, I think would behoove us to clarify our policy on hours of.
Well, he has a list of them, so. I mean, if we were to walk in there and there's no manager on site,
Well,
We will clarify that.
We need
Just
to,
it-
we need to clarify our policy to more
So we're all on the same-
specifically state,
Well, he's since provided a list of
Yeah.
managers, so.
but we need to clarify that.
no, but what we're talking about is the ambivalence that you saw in the written policy between the 40 hours a week and at one point and at another point are saying that a manager had to be there at all times. I personally don't consider it ambivalent. We're saying that a particular person, and if it's the main manager, Mr. O'Toole, needs to be there 40 hours a week. However, if the place is open more than 40 hours a week, there has to be somebody there that is a manager, that has the responsibilities of the manager in his absence.
So
I'm not sure that's
I like it.
Well clarified?
Well clarified.
That's how I read it.
But that's the way I could read
Who's,
it anyway.
who's to
Going
say, like, you know, the word petite or this, I mean, we're not talking, it has to be gender or size, I mean, the manager's a manager, right?
No, we're not saying.
Managers and
Yeah,
managers.
that's
No, I'm not,
sometimes-
I'm
there
not
was
going,
a lot
I'm
of
not,
comments.
I am not going down that road.
There's a lot of
Right,
comments. so I-
I'm just saying,
No.
I'll let
So
it
can I
go.
have a second? Or would you like a second on
Could
that?
Yeah, I'd like a second on the amendment, but now we're talking about the amendment.
Just one further point. We've had some discussions, not only tonight, previously, about the representations that have been made regarding the operations of O'Toole's. So if we're looking forward for compliance for a period of 1 year, certainly the rules and regs that have been imposed by the town are in play. Certainly any rules that have been imposed by the state upon Mr. O'Toole as a liquor license holder are in play. Are we also, is a violation of any of those representations that have been previously made in terms of a doorman on weekend nights, for example, the document that you spoke to earlier that has been marked as Exhibit 9, are those also conditions that are being imposed for this 1 year period?
Is that what we're doing now? We're having suggestions by
I
the
don't,
town
I
attorney?
don't
for
think so,
discipline?
Matt. I mean, that, no.
I just want to be
But
clear.
wait,
I think, you know, going forward from this, I think, again, clarity would be beneficial, that perhaps you, the chief, I'd be willing to sit with you, give us what we will, you know, what it is that you are going to do, what the chief expects you to do, what our compliance officers expect to see when they go in there, and we'll all be on the same level playing field going forward.
That's across the board for every establishment, just, not just.
Yeah, you know,
O'Toole's.
we're not picking on anybody. It just so happens that the incidents that have come up and that are before us are on Mr. O'Toole. That's the only case here right now.
okay, so,
And to answer your other question, I have been in your establishment. I've been in your establishment many times.
Good,
So
thank you.
it's, you know, I have nothing against it.
Great.
are we clear on what the amendment is?
Yep.
All those, do I have to repeat it?
I'll restate it if you'd like. The motion as amended is,
We haven't passed the amendment yet.
oh, okay.
So if you could read the amendment, that'd be fine.
The amendment to the motion is to identify 2 days suspension to be served between now and December 31st, 2017, and 3 days to be held in abeyance for 1 year from this date, which would be served in the event there are violations that occur subsequent to
And
this
was
date.
in the amendment, 1 day would be either a Friday or a
And
Saturday?
1 day would be either a Friday or a Saturday.
Okay, all those, any further discussion of the amendment? All those in favor?
I'll go with that.
Okay. Do we need to discuss the motion as amended? All those in favor of the motion as amended?
I'll go with it. FCC, here it comes.
We'll send a written version of this to you. When I made when I asked for the motion, 5 days with 2 days, then 3 days, I had in mind not to cream you. I had in mind to come up with something that would be reasonable, not something that would be outlandish. My intention in seeing this as a second offense instead of a third offense was for the same reason too. What I'm trying to do, Mr. O'Toole, is to be as understanding as I possibly could, but also to keep in my memory the hearing that we had and the events that caused it.
Formally, I'd like the board to stay the suspension pending an appeal, formally, as we did last time.
Sure.
Thank you.
I would like to make one more comment. I want to get along with it. I appreciate you saying that. You didn't have to say that. I appreciate it. 26 years. I really feel that there has been a lot of negative comments that are on TV. And Mr. Salvucci, with all due respect,
Yeah.
and you can take this for whatever way you want, but for you to comment on my establishment on social media as
I did
being...
not, did I comment on it?
Yes, yes, you did.
What did I say?
You made a comment about somebody had left a motorcycle in my...
I did not say
parking lot.
that. I did not.
Well, that was brought to my attention that you had made a comment on social media. And if it wasn't you, then I apologize. If it was, I would ask you to refrain from doing such
Okay.
actions, that's all. So if it wasn't you, my sincerest apologies.
Motorcycle, somebody left the motorcycle.
That's
One
all.
one way of getting along better in the future is to think about whether or not you really want to appeal it, and whether or not just taking the 2 days might be it.
Well, I'm not saying we're going to, I'm just asking to stay pending. But there are some strict guidelines on whether, when we have to file an appeal. I believe it's 5 days. So, we could always file the appeal and then discuss whether we're gonna go forward or not, because that's a process that's about 6 to 8 months, so. We'll have a lot to talk about, but just pending
Okay.
pending the suspension, ask for a stay. And how long, not to put you guys on the spot, but how long until we get notice
decision.
of the suspension?
I'd say 2 weeks, within 2 weeks.
And then the clock starts running on that after we
Right,
get
right,
this, okay.
right.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
last, for clarification, you had made a suggestion, like you're open to discuss. I am too, but I don't know if that's legal for a selectman to do that. Don't, is that, you know what I mean? Like if we met with the chief and said, and we brought, the fire chief, is it?
Yes.
It's okay, so,
You just
I don't want any like collusion,
It's not.
You just can't meet with a quorum of the board without it being a public meeting.
I would entertain that
And
any
our
day.
goal at the end of all this is that you're a success.
Thank
that
you.
Every business in town is a success,
Thank
and that everybody who lives in the town can go into these businesses and enjoy it.
Thank you.
So we're looking to work with you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Go around the board. Do you have anything, Frank?
Yes. We have a situation on Alger Drive in Brockton where once again, a force main has ruptured. I became aware of it today at 2 o'clock. It happened yesterday. The last time this happened, it wound up costing the town $240,000 to make the repairs and remediate.
Did we put it in?
It's all our. I
It's in
think.
Brockton, but it's ours, and we're responsible for.
Yeah, I had suggested when that last occurred that we engage an engineer to take a look at the lines, do some inspections and determine the condition. Certainly at this point, we're going to have to do that. But in the interim, because we have to remediate, I need to ask the board, consistent with an email I sent out this afternoon, to vote to declare that a state of emergency exists with respect to the repair of the pipe, and to do so under General Law 40, Section 31, certifying that this condition poses an immediate threat to health or safety of persons or property, and to direct me to seek approval from the Director of Accounts to spend money we haven't appropriated, which would be funded in a special or annual town meeting to follow for whatever the cost is. And
Do
it
we
would,
have any idea what the cost is?
well, the last one was 240,000. I'm not thinking this is going to be much less. The fund that we will use to pay for it is the retained earnings in the Sewer Enterprise Fund, which has over $5 million in it, and certainly provides available funds. So what I'd like to do, with the permission of the board, is to read a motion that would be made and seconded. to declare that under Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 31, a state of emergency exists with respect to a fractured sewer main on Alger Street in Brockton that is discharging raw sewage in the public way, posing a substantial threat to health and safety of persons and property in that area, and to direct the town administrator to seek approval from the Director of Accounts to spend in excess of appropriation to effect necessary repairs. Such expenditures shall be appropriated from Sewer Water Enterprise retained earnings at a future town meeting.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anything else, Frank?
And then on a brighter note, I received a call from the American Red Cross, and they would like to conduct another blood drive in the auditorium on January 16th, 2018.
Need a vote for that?
We typically vote for outside
Okay, is
organizations.
there a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anything else, Frank?
Just exact.
Okay, Randy?
Just, again, to lighten it up, Saturday I was honored to be part of Team Panther Power at the JDRF1 walk. Team Panther Power raises money to the type 1 diabetes research. We had kids probably from every school in the district, parents and grandparents, and with the support of the community and various businesses, I think the team raised close to $20,000
Great.
for diabetes research.
Okay, terrific.
And
Scott?
shout out for Lisa Green, whose car will be entered in the Spooktacular Car Show this Sunday. It will be at the field next to the police station. And they do it every year. It's a dare event. A lot of cars show up, antique cars. They all get decked out in Halloween, bring the kids because they'll be handing out candy. And we can all vote for Lisa Green's car to win.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I had one other thing I missed.
Yep.
Just an announcement that the Lottery Commission has notified us that they are offering a Keno license to existing 7-Eleven stores. And we have one in town that has taken over Tedeschi's. Unless the board chooses between now and 21 days from now to object, the license will automatically issue.
Okay, thank you. We need to go in executive session in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Exception 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. And Exception 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining and litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the position of the public body.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Yes.
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 And we'll come back in open session only to adjourn.